right, we are broadcasting live. This is Armin Navobi from Atheist Republic, and we are with...
Yeah, I'm Carl from Earthling Carl.
Right, and you're in England, right? UK.
Yeah, yeah, UK, England, yeah,
Okay, cool.
Birmingham.
Nice. Thank you for joining us today.
Okay.
And you have a YouTube channel, right? That you talk about Islam there, and you talk about the Reform movement, and you specifically talk about this radio show that people that come on and talk about Islam on it, which Majid Nawaz is on. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so basically, it's like these LBC shows, and you have random people come on, and I just sort of analyze the cause really. But in terms of the Islam, it kind of started last year in sort of July, August,
Right.
and I literally just Googled, "Is Islam a religion of peace?" And I found the website with the same name, and just went from there really. And then like you learn more and more. And but in terms of Majid Nawaz, I didn't actually learn about him until about December or January, which
Right.
was, and obviously when I actually found him, I realized that he was saying things that didn't make sense, which is like the Islamism and the Islamic Reform. It just confused me. So
All right. Just to let you know, I'm gonna try to first of all, I might agree with you something on some things, and
yeah,
but I still challenge you on it. But I
yeah, of
also
course,
might disagree with you on some things, and of course I'll challenge you on those as well,
yeah.
right? But it's not meant to be like I'm not trying to be. Let me know if I'm being aggressive. I've been told I can be aggressive and rude sometimes, so let me know if I'm
Yeah,
being rude.
on,
Okay.
on the vegan video was fun.
Oh,
The
you watched the
veganism one.
vegan
Yeah.
video? Are you a
Yeah,
vegan?
that was in. I'm a vegan. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All
That
right.
was interesting.
Okay. So, but so tell me your thoughts about. So, is Majid the only reformist you look at, or are you also interested in like people like Ayan Hirsi Ali or other reformists out there, or is it mostly Majid?
Yeah, I think it's just he's the biggest name in the reform. Also, I think you have Zudi Jassa. He's another reformer. You have Imam Tawhidi, the Australian guy.
Right. Yeah.
But I think Majid has the biggest profile in terms of if you like, word association, Islamic reformer, you think Majid. And so he's the kingpin, basically.
Well, I also think
And
about
so,
Ayan because that shows that on the atheist side we also have people that are advocating for reform, right?
yeah, Ayan's interesting because she was really against Islam in
Right.
early videos you watch. She is like a pit bull against Islam. And then she kind of changed
She
in the
did.
last few years, where now she's advocating reform. But I don't know. I mean, almost
My,
like Majid had an influence on her, possibly.
my understanding is that the Arab Spring, I might be incorrect, but my understanding is that the Arab Spring had an influence on her. I think,
Okay.
I think what her understanding was that there's no way that, and this is very oversimplification of her. I hope I'm in like probably her position is much more nuanced than
Mm.
this, and maybe I'm misinformed about this. But my understanding is that her understanding was there is no way for Muslims in general to start advocating for democracy and stuff like that. But then when she saw the Arab Spring, she saw masses and masses of Muslims basically asking for democracy and free speech and stuff like that, and she saw hope in that, right? But I think that says a lot to her background because where I come from Iran, and my entire teenage lives, I was grown around people that were Muslim and also fighting against theocracy, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it was strange that that was news to her, right? Because
Yeah.
I guess based on where she comes from, and I watched some of your videos, and I also think that your understanding also comes mostly from studying the text, right?
Yeah, yeah. Basically, I'd say my main influences are like Bill Warner, David Wood, and Robert Spencer,
Right.
and just a website called Wiki Islam, which is really detailed, and obviously religionofpeace.com, and just the actual doctrine itself, basically Quran, Hadith, and Sirah, and then just going from there. So,
Right. So there's two different topics that I want to talk about.
mm,
First, I want to talk about reformists,
mm,
and maybe specifically maybe someone of Majid, because you have looked at him more, right? And then I
yeah,
also want to talk about Islams and Muslims, right? Because
yeah,
I do think that in some of your, well, I'll get to that later. I don't want to.
yeah.
But okay, so in this video, I'm gonna actually try to defend Majid a bit, okay?
Okay.
And yeah, well, because you're gonna say, right?
On, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not gonna back down on the fact that I don't agree with reform, right? I mean,
No, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, I could be. Here's the thing. If you bring me a crystal ball and show me the future, and I see that actually Islam has completely changed its meaning and people are Muslim but they're just culturally Muslim, and Islam doesn't really mean that you follow the Quran, and it's just the Quran is just an ancient book that Muslims are saying, well, of course that's bullshit, we just like to read of it like storybook, and that's not
yeah,
really a religion, and like kind of like the secular Jews do, right? Like they see it,
yeah.
like if you
It's not
show me that,
literal. Yeah.
yeah, if they show me that in the future, I'm like, okay, well, I was really wrong. I didn't see this coming, right?
Because you
So,
even because in the Quran, I think even like Muhammad says to the Jews, "You're not doing the stoning." That's part of the thing, isn't it? Where he actually said, "You're hiding that verse." I'm pretty sure that's like one of the
yeah, well, yeah, but yeah, I know what you're referring to, but to
yeah.
make complete sense of that, you have to also look at the Sunnah to make sense of what he's telling the Jews that you're hiding some
That's what I
verses,
mean. Yeah. So
but
even
then you
back.
have to look at the story behind it to know what he's specifically referring to, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but the point is that the thing is that I think that based on what I've seen, more Muslims are leaving Islam
Mm,
than thinking like, oh, maybe God, this book means something else, right? Maybe I shouldn't
mm,
take this literally, right? I mean,
yeah.
if anybody that was convinced that they shouldn't take the Quran literally, based on my experience, stopped considering themselves a Muslim. Like, well, if this is not the word of God, if I don't see this as the word of God,
Yeah.
then I'm not a Muslim, right?
Mm,
And I've seen the hope for the ex-Muslim movement. I've seen, but even when I was in Iran, I've seen before the atheist movement growing to the extent that it has today, the hatred for Islam in Iran is huge, right?
really? Okay.
It's actually a little bit extreme. Like I think some of the alt-right people in the West will go to Iranians and tell them to please calm the fuck down, right? Like based on my experience, right? Like it actually gets the anti-Islam sentiment in Iran among the liberals is sometimes it's racist actually.
Can they be
Um,
open with it though?
Go on.
Can they be
Yeah, of
open with
course.
that opinion?
Go on.
Really? I sort of, they can actually express that opinion in
No,
public.
no, they
Oh no!
can't.
Oh yeah.
No, no, no. See, there's a difference between believing Islam and announcing that you left Islam, right?
Okay.
Well, like
Yeah.
you
You
could do
can't.
that. You could do that in parties and social gatherings, making sure that there's, well, in like if you're in a party that everybody's drinking alcohol and girls are dancing and there's music, you're pretty sure there's no fucking Basiji in there, right? Like
Yeah.
then you're gonna be like, if anybody talks about the mullah, you can be sure that everybody's gonna talk about them with absolute hate, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's pretty common. Like, when Ramadan time in Iran, we had this secret spot in our university where people that were liberals would secretly bring food, like as if it was drugs, right? And we will go hide in the corner and we eat, and that was a great place to pick up girls, right? Because these are liberal girls,
Yeah.
right? Right. But I'm just saying that, and I think there's and guess what? Sometimes is even the liberal people that are against Islamic theocracy, they will still call themselves Muslims, even though they really didn't practice Islam, right? I
So
think
what do they actually do?
Did nothing, nothing. My parents, for example, my parents would call themselves Muslim, right? But my dad will come every night. He will come from work. He will grab a bottle of beer and watch BBC until he was too tired and go to sleep, right? And I never saw them fast. I never saw them pray. My mom was more superstitious than Muslim. She would go and pay these weird magicians to do spells so that I become successful in my exams and stuff, which is that was anti-Islamic because magic is actually a crime in Islam, right?
Oh, because the Sufis, they're spiritual, aren't they? But that's separate to the Shia.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but Shias are more Shias have a more love-hate relationship with Sufis than Sunnis.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah,
Sunnis
okay.
absolutely despise Sufis, but Shias kind of because Shias kind of like this whole mysticism, poetry
Yeah.
bullshit. Like even Khomeini wrote a poetry book. I don't know if he wrote it himself because when I listen to his speeches, he doesn't seem to know how to speak, but then he wrote a poetry book, right? So I don't know if somebody wrote it for him, but his book is about wine and stuff like that, which is something that Sufis
Strange.
talk about. Yeah, but I mean, but the way Shias excuse that is like, oh, when in Sufi poetry, when they're talking about girls, they mean the love for God. When they're talking about
It's a
wine, they
metaphor.
mean, yeah, it's a metaphor
Yeah.
for other bullshit, which is not. I don't know, but there's so much sexual metaphor that we read. They were like, "Are you sure this is about Islam?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, right." No, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like a lot of people in the West, I criticize Islam a lot, right? And I say it's absolute horseshit. Everything in that book is not everything, but it's almost impossible to write a book that is all shit, right? It needs to be as divine as a book that is all good, right? But
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, I think we have I watched some of your videos, and this you correctly identify the problems with Islam. But
Mm.
but then when you look at Muslims, I think you assume that they're all in this conspiracy to make Islam successful. And
No,
I can tell you, most Muslims don't give a shit, right?
no,
Most Muslims are don't even really know what it is to be a Muslim, right? Or what Islam really when I was in Iran, every household had a Quran, right? Almost every
yeah.
household. But guess what? You know what we do with it? We put it in every New Year. We put it in the Nowruz, decorations. When we traveled, we kissed it. You put it around our
Oh,
head. We made sure we never left it on the ground. We put it on top of all the other books and stuff like that. But you know what we never did? We never
read
read
it.
it. That's the one thing we never did with the Quran, right? Right?
But
Yeah, go on.
I think what it is, though, you don't need a huge amount of people to actually influence. You need more a case of a lot of passive people who generally agree with what they're doing, but they're not actively doing it in a sense. Like, and even in those countries, these Middle Eastern countries, you see the support for Sharia is really high. And do you think the support for Sharia in Iran is high generally? I mean,
Well, okay. The thing is that even the people that support Sharia, they really don't know because what does Sharia mean, right? Sharia just means Islamic law, right? So, but if you go tell people like, do you think that people should be prosecuted for their opinion specifically? They would be like, no, of course not. And they're like, well, do you support Sharia? They're like, yeah. Like, well, what the hell? Like, that doesn't make sense, right? and even like even if you go, like, I haven't met people that are okay. Like, I lived in Upper Tehran, right? So that might be different from the rest of Tehran, right?
okay.
But for example, Ali Rizvi, right? He says that he says, like, do you think apostates, when he talked to his Muslim family and stuff, right? He asked him, do you think apostates should be killed? And they're like, yeah, of course. And they're like, well, do you think I should be killed? I'm like, no, of course not. Like, but I'm an apostate, right?
Yeah.
And you know, for example,
Double standards.
right? I ask my family. All right, okay. So my family, they don't think that. Not my immediate family, but my more distant family. I asked them, do you think non-Muslims are going to go to hell? And they said, like, yes, they're going to go to hell. And they're like, well, I left Islam. Do you think I'm going to go to hell? I'm like, no, you're such a sweet boy. You're not going to go to hell. And like,
Yeah.
so what? So I think for, you know, support, as long as, you know, I don't think these people are better than Islam, right? As long as it's a distant concept for them. These are not like the jihadists that you will give them like me and they were like, yeah, I'll happily behead you, right? These are people that this has to be a distant concept for them to support it, as long as it's, as you know, these are people that if they see blood, they might even faint, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think the thing is that, but I agree with you that the idea, even though most Muslims will never do such things, it takes only a small percentage that like, well, I'm supposed to take this book seriously, so let me read it and let's see what it says. And they're like, oh, okay, I'm supposed to do it. Like even me, right? I took it seriously and I almost killed myself, right?
Exactly, with the burning and stuff, you know.
Right. But the thing is that for us to the thing is that small percentage of Muslims that take it seriously, they take the authority of these books from the majority that give legitimacy to it without actually practicing it, right? So the way to take that legitimacy away is to go to that majority, right? And tell them like, well, have you read this shit, right? And then then comes, but to be able to go to this majority, we have to first befriend them, or else they won't listen to us, right? If we go to them and be like, you're a Muslim, you support pedophilia, you're supporting a barbaric religion. Well, they actually don't, right? They just don't know what they're really supporting. And even if you point it out to them, they might like just be like, gosh, they don't want to listen to you, right? But because it's too much for them. Like most Muslims are like most people. Most people, you and me are different. You and me and Sam and Majid and Ayan and all these people that are watching this video or follow our Facebook pages, we are in the minority, a group of people that care about philosophy, religion, politics. Most people, if you go to a party and talk about these things, most people won't listen to you because it's boring to them. And guess what? Most Muslims are like that too. Most Muslims don't care about religion, politics. They want to see if they could afford this car that they always wanted to buy. They want to see if the paint on the wall matches the furniture that just bought. They want to see if they could pass this exam tomorrow that they haven't studied for until the last minute. You know, these are the things that occupy their minds. Thinking about whether Islam is advocating for slavery or not is like, how is that going to affect my life? I have to pass this exam tomorrow. You know, I don't really care. Right.
In Iran, do they have madrasas where they teach Islam? Is that
in Iran, madrasa means school. So for you to say, do you have madrasas? It says like, do you have schools, right? So we have school. We have schools, which they're called madrasa, and in school we learn physics, literature, math, biology, evolution. For too many people surprises. But yeah, the Big Bang Theory, all of that is, you know, in Iran, evolution is accepted as fact, right?
Because in Turkey they've changed it, aren't they?
Yeah. Turkey is going backwards, and in Malaysia and in Indonesia are going backwards as well. But also, the thing is, it's mandatory in Iran to learn Islam. But guess what? It's cherry-picked Islam. It's mandatory to learn the Quran. And it's mandatory to learn Arabic, right?
So, have you got to memorize it, or is it not that sort of official where you got to like
memorize the Quran? No. We see Hafiz as miracles, and seeing them as miracles means that they're very rare.
Okay.
Right? We had a 2-year-old in Iran that got an honorary doctorate because by age 2 he had memorized not just the Quran but also Nahj al-Balagha, which was
Wow.
Ali's book, right?
At 2?
At 2. And they call
Really?
it, yeah, and he was like a miracle. I think his name was Tabatabai, Dr. Tabatabai. He was a doctor by age 2. Right? So they bragged about him as an Iranian miracle.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, and I don't
Was
think
it Imam too then?
I don't no, I don't think so. No. Right. But but guess what? When he was being bragged about on the news, he was on the news, right? Like people will come. They had taken him to, I think they took him to Mecca, and people would come test him, and Iran was so happy that these Sunnis were so impressed by him, right? And people would come and just give him a number, and he would just recite the verses, right? And people would cry and be like, "Oh my God, this is a miracle of God." And we were watching it, and at this point, I was a little bit more Muslim than my parents, right? And my dad looked at this on TV, and he was like, "What a waste of a brilliant mind." This was my dad's reaction to him, and this is a person that calls himself a Muslim, right?
Yeah.
So, but
it's Islam.
Yeah, even though he was memorizing the Quran, my dad's reaction to that was, "What a waste of a brilliant mind." That was my dad's reaction to seeing this on the news, right?
So in terms of Iran, why don't you have some sort of like rising up or something?
We did. We did. Yeah. It was brutally the green revolution. That was what it was. The green uprising, right?
Yeah.
And we had children being sent home in body bags to their parents. They did something so horrific in reaction to that the Iranians are probably never going to try it again.
So it's sort of like that was like the last chance kind of thing.
I think that was the last chance. That was the last chance, and it was such a brutal reaction to it that I think Iranians are gonna like, maybe slow progress is better than trying anything ever again. My brother's best friend was in these, before I left Iran, I saw the beginnings of that revolution happening. I still have the songs, anti-authority songs memorized in my head, right? But the thing is, when I left, my parents were happy that I left Iran because they knew once this revolution starts, I'm going to be in the midst of those kids, right? Yeah. And I'm going to get myself killed. So when I left Iran, but my brother was still there, and his best friend in class, he went to get groceries, and he had like grocery bags in his hand on his way home. But he got mixed in the crowd, the anti-government crowd, and the Basiji, the morality police, religious police, came and just stabbed him, right? Wow. And he was like, people are like, dude, he has grocery bag. He's obviously just mixed in the crowd. He's not even protesting. Yeah, but he died.
Jesus.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to even have him. Even when you had a ceremony for their death, the police will show up just to make sure that that doesn't turn into its own uprising, right?
So was it the all the people against the government, or were there some people on the government side?
See, okay, so Iran is very divided, right? So, but most people are religious, but most people in Upper Tehran don't think Iran is religious because they are living in their own liberal bubble, and they think their country. But the thing is, I spend time with the religious people, but even the religious people, they're not very pro-government, right? Okay. And for you to be religious, for many of these people, it just means that you just pray 5 times a day, you fast during Ramadan, and that's about it. You get on with your life. Right, you get on with your life after that. You just make sure if your daughter is covering her head properly, not like these liberal girls that is turning into a headscarf rather than they're turning into a like neck scarf rather than a head covering, right? It keeps going back and back and back. Like liberal girls in Iran, they really try to change this into a fashion thing rather than an Islamic thing, right?
And so they're not forced to actually put the hijab back on.
No, they're forced. It's actually the only. Is it the only country? Well, okay. So in Iran, it's actually even more forced than in Saudi Arabia, because I think in Saudi Arabia, if you're a foreigner, you don't have to cover your head, right?
Okay, but it's advised, isn't it? I think
in Iran, every woman, doesn't matter where you're from, you have to cover your head, right?
Wow.
So it's forced. Yeah, in Iran it's
Yeah.
forced, and you know, as a kid growing up in liberal Iran, I constantly heard women complaining about it, right?
Mm.
But this is my point. I'm saying if so, whether it's reform is the right answer or advocating anti-Islam altogether is the answer.
No, I think with me, it's more a case of it's pro-truth, so it's about honesty,
Right.
and so it's not really anti-Islam. It's just how I see it. Once you learn about Islam, then you should logically hate it. That's how I see it. So it's not about just
Well, I mean, it is anti-Islam. I'm not. I'm anti-Islam, right?
yeah, you know, yeah.
Right.
But
But
again, it's more.
yeah, go on.
But it's more just the truth. Do you know what I mean? It's like rather than trying to conceal certain parts, which I think the reformers try and do, and that kind of doesn't give me a great feeling, you know? It's sort
Yeah,
of
but here's the thing with reformers. I definitely disagree with them, right?
yeah,
Definitely disagree with them because they say like, you know, maybe, you know, you know, but even when it comes to reformers, I do think Majid, even though I completely disagree with him, is a bit more honest than some other reformers, because some other reformers are saying like, let's make this verse mean something else, right?
yeah,
But Majid is at least saying that this verse cannot mean something else. Let's try to get Muslims to ignore it, right?
yeah.
And I don't know how he's planning. Well, that is a bit more honest than most reformers I listen to, right?
I think it's
But
just like yeah, go on, yeah, you go.
but I don't know how he can do that. How can you
Yeah,
get
exactly.
this book to be the direct word of God and at the same time ignore the word of God? Does God, like, I'm really curious about what his argument to a Muslim is on that point. Like, is he telling them that God made a mistake? Have you heard of him saying what his
Yeah, so
argument? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so basically, like you're saying, he is claiming that he is more wise than Allah, and obviously you can't be more wise than God. It makes no sense. And another
But
thing with the verses, he will mention, for example, the wife beating verse, but he will never mention the fact that Muhammad beat his own wife. He hit Aisha, he struck her on the chest, and he caused her pain. So he won't go there. It's kind of like Muhammad is the one thing he won't go into. That's what I sort of.
right, well, okay.
Yeah.
So I think I know. Here's the thing. What I've noticed with Muslims is that in the problem with the Old Testament was God was too mystical and too out there for you to be able to have an emotional relationship with him, right? So
Mm.
Jesus was such a good reaction to it because, like, oh, look, God is just walking among us. Like, love this person, because it's easier to love people than love this mysterious force, right? So
Yeah.
Muslims kind of claim that they love God but not Muhammad, but it's kind of the other way around, right? Like they hold
Yeah,
Muhammad
exactly.
they love Muhammad much more than they love God, even though they claim
That's the
otherwise.
point, exactly.
Because
Yeah.
Muhammad is a person, you could easily love a person more than and actually when it comes to Shias, it becomes even more the other way around. By the way, we got a question. I think that he's saying it's a great stepping stone. Okay, so the savage atheist is saying that Majid is saying it's a great stepping stone toward eradicating religion. I don't know if he actually ever said that he wants to eradicate religion. I
I
think he
think
said,
no.
I think
Yeah.
he's saying that Islam will stay, so we just have to change it. But I'm just saying, but I think he thinks that, you know, if he talks shit about Muhammad, Muslims, even Muslims that don't take Islam seriously, I talk to Muslims, and when I tell them Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old, they're like, no, he didn't. Right? That's the most common reaction I get. Right? So if
But you
I
show the
go,
evidence, don't you? You can show the
yeah,
evidence, the hadith.
okay,
The,
but
the,
here's the thing: do you think Muslims that have never read the Quran, what are the odds that they have read the Hadith, and what are the
no, you can
odds
just
that
show them on your mobile or your phone. I mean,
yeah, I do, and then you know what they say? They say like,
yeah.
oh, this is bullshit. These are just who knows which hadiths are true. People just make stuff stories up about the Muhammad,
Oh
and they're
God.
like, no, this is authority. Then I tell them, no, this is authoritative hadith. This is one of the few things that is accepted among all scholars in Islam. And then say like,
Yeah, but you can
and then
just
they
ask
say
them. Yeah.
like, well, it's not the Quran, is it? Like, and then they
Mm.
say like, no, these like this has been accepted for 1400 years in Islam as part of Islamic
Yeah.
um, this is canon, this is Islamic canon. And like, no, these are just some old men trying to get their agenda into Islam. That's,
Well,
these are,
and the thing is, you just ask them how often do they pray each day, and they pray 5 times because of the Sunnah, because of Muhammad, the night journey to
right,
Jerusalem. That's why they pray 5 times. So if they're praying 5 times a day to the Hadith, then
right,
that's a Sahih Hadith. So
right.
how can they not believe in another Sahih Hadith? You understand? It's like, and
Yeah,
even the Shahada comes from the Hadith. I mean, the 5 pillars, I think, all of them
right.
pretty
Yeah,
much.
all of them
So
come from the Hadith. Yes.
yeah, exactly. So I don't,
Right. So they have, yeah, okay. So there's so many different reactions to that by Muslims. Some people,
Mm,
some of them even try to justify it, right?
mm.
In Iran, they told us, back then, girls matured faster, which
I know,
is
in the heat.
which is like, I like, no, our genome hasn't changed that much for 1400 years, right? Like, we're the same species, right?
Good
Like,
lord.
and then they told us, well, in hot places, girls mature faster. And I'm like, no, I've been in the Philippines, and and that's hot, that's extremely hot. That's like close to the equator, and girls,
Not a
9-year-old
chance.
girls there look like other 9-year-old girls. But here's the thing: you have to give this. You have to understand the fact that they're trying to come up with excuses, even though it's bullshit excuses. It means that they don't like it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a good thing that they do. I mean,
Yeah.
they're idiots. Their excuses are stupid. But also, let's give them credit for they they don't want this book to say that my prophet had sex with a 9-year-old, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They don't want to be wrong, do they? It's like they believed in this from their child, and it's
Yeah,
like, oh my god, my entire worldview is a pile of shit. It's like, oh, that's quite, yeah,
right. I mean, I don't hear that. I don't hear this. I don't hear. Yeah, he had sex with a 9-year-old. What's the problem with that, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't hear. I mean, I don't hear that. What I hear is like these bullshit excuses that, hey, well, 9-year-old girls matured faster back then, which is absolute horseshit. But it also says that these people are not as bad as the prophet because they don't agree with having sex with a 9-year-old, right?
So basically,
So
they're saying their morality is better than Muhammad. So then they have to
exactly.
do, yeah. But again, Muhammad, chapter 33, verse 21, he was the excellent pattern of conduct. So there's a massive cognitive dissonance. They have to sort of, so
There is, but this cognitive dissonance is not uncommon among all people, right?
no, yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I mean, most people don't macroanalyze their views and try to make sure there's no contradictions in there, right? So,
Mm.
I mean, and I can forgive them for that, right? I mean, I wouldn't forgive them for being like Muhammad, to be like, yeah, like if somebody when people use those excuses to actually do rape 9-year-olds, I'm like, well, you're
Yeah,
you're as shitty as him, right?
yeah,
But those people that are not rational, that are not being rational, that do have these cognitive dissonances and are not analyzing their views, I really don't hate them because that's what most people are like, right? Most people don't really
mm,
analyze things to this much detail, right?
yeah.
And I think the way to change their opinions are not to go to them and be like, well, you're supporting pedophilia, right? Because they're obviously not, right? Because they're trying to find ways for them to not be supporting. They're
But
just
you
being,
could just say
yeah,
you could
yeah,
just say you're supporting Jew hatred, or you could say you're supporting wife beating. You could do, and like I think it's more a case of you want them to just find one part that isn't right because the Quran's perfect, Muhammad's perfect. You only need that one bit of doubt. I think you've been saying where just that one tiny, you know.
right. So we have to these people that usually don't pay attention to these things, we have to somehow change their mind. And
Mm,
I think the way to do that is to befriend them, right? And also show to them that our disagreement with them is just a disagreement, right? It's not us accusing them of these crimes, because guess what, we might have disagreements with Muslims, and these Muslims might not understand Islam very well,
yeah,
but this disagreement with them is very small compared to the bigger difference that both me, you, and these Muslims have with people that actually pick up arms and kill others, in the name of others, in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
name of whatever, right? So
yeah.
I think I might read the Quran and be like, well, this is obviously horse shit, and somebody else might say like, no, it's not. It's the best thing that has ever happened. It's the word of God, right? And they might really try to come up with gymnastic arguments, as the Savage Atheist point says in the live chat, that these are just gymnastic arguments. But these are disagreements, and I may be like, well, I might think, oh, well, you're an idiot to think like that. But at the same time, me, you, this guy will never rape a 9-year-old girl, right?
I
We'll
think it's
never.
more a case that like they are maintaining the Quran and Islam. So even though they don't do it, their children or their children's children. So many of the Muslims who
Right.
came to the UK originally, they were just good people, but their children and the second, third generation, that's where the problem comes, where they
So we
look at
need to
Islam.
reach out to these people,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So and we need to talk to them more, and we need to find a way for them not to see us as their enemies, even though we're disagreeing with them on the nature of their religion, right?
yeah,
So now there's two different approaches to do that. Majid thinks the best way to do that is to not offend them he does offend them a lot, but not to maybe go with directly saying Muhammad was a fucking pedophile, right?
yeah.
But also he does go a little bit more out there than other reformists by saying like, but this verse is telling you to, rape women, like capture women in war and basically,
Yeah.
have sex with them, even though they're not your wife. He says that, right? And here's the thing. I did see in some of your videos that you gave him credit for saying those things, right? And to be honest,
Yeah.
I've never seen somebody say I'm a Muslim and point to these verses and be like, well, that's a problem, right? And
I think the main issue I have though is
right.
that if you watch some of my videos, you realize that most Muslims hate him. They really don't like him, and they call him like the monarchic, the hypocrite,
Right.
and they just that they see him as a bad person who is against. They even say you want to change Islam, you want to edit it, and So I don't think. Basically, I'm not sure how he's going to influence Islam or Muslims when Muslims hate him, and I just.
I don't think so. I agree. I think he has more atheists and ex-Muslim supporters than he has Muslim supporters, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that the ex-Muslim movement has a better chance at reaching to Muslims,
Totally agree.
Yeah, and than the Reform movement. But guess what?
Yeah.
I have been wrong in the past, right? And I have, I'm an ex-Muslim, so I've changed my worldviews completely. So there's a slight chance that me and you are wrong about this, and and one day there's going to be people are going to remain Muslim, but they're going to be like, well, Quran is bullshit. It's just part of our tradition. I don't see that ever happening, but there's a slight chance that we could be wrong, right?
Yeah, I think it's more a case that like with you. Your sort of organization is fairly small, not sort of dissing you or anything, and you've had lots of success with thousands of people, I think, like leaving Islam.
Well, Atheist Republic is the biggest online atheist in the world. We have one.
Yeah, but the YouTube's quite so. Yeah,
our YouTube just has off the ground, but our Facebook is 1,700,000 followers.
Okay, fair play. Yeah, so exactly. So, but I mean, in terms of Majid, in terms of his kind of reach. He got millions of dollars, I think, from the British government, and he got exposure on Bill Maher, Sam Harris, the book, the movie, Dave Rubin, Sargon of Akkad, Richard Dawkins giving shout outs, Einhurst Lee, and all that. I'm not too sure what he's actually done. I don't have any figures or data because you have stats, don't you? Like thousands of people, but what has he actually done? How many people has he reformed or de-radicalized? And it all seems like he never gives this information out. I mean, do you know?
No, I don't know. And I do suspect that people that find out about these verses in the Quran are more likely to leave Islam than to be like, well, I'm still gonna be a Muslim and I'm just gonna not take these verses seriously, right? Yeah. And I do agree that the ex-Muslim movement hasn't been getting enough attention as much as it deserves compared to the Reform movement. But I also have to give credit to Majid for being one of the few Muslims to bring attention to ex-Muslims. You know
Also,
what I mean?
just, but I think for me personally, I mean, he always says he knows half the Quran, he knows all Islamic theology and history. I think he could be an amazing weapon, like on your side. You know, he could use his knowledge to help Muslims leave Islam, but instead he sort of does this bizarre reform, which is never going to happen, and there's
I
no
know,
logic behind it.
I
So I
know.
don't.
I disagree, and I completely disagree with him
Yeah,
on that, right? But I
yeah,
could disagree with him on that, and at the same time, thanking him for being one of the few people that is talking about ex-Muslims, because nobody else is talking about ex-Muslims. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
if you're on the ground and people are beating you and you're asking, screaming help, and nobody's paying attention to you, and this guy comes and tries to lend you a hand to get you out of this beating situation, you're not going to be like, wait, I disagree with you, so no, somebody else come help me, right? Like, ex-Muslims are one of the worst persecuted minorities that are out there, right? So I completely disagree with Majid on the chances for reform, completely, right? And
Yeah.
I will continue to tell people like Aya and Hirsi Ali or Majid to why I think this will never work and why they should put their focus on the ex-Muslim movement rather than the reform movement. But at the same time, when Majid, when the ex-Muslims in Malaysia, right?
Yeah,
When the government was hunting them down, according to
yeah.
their own quote, Majid was one of the very few people that tweeted it out, right?
I think though, is it sort of like he is giving support to people being persecuted, but I don't think he's saying that's an option for Muslims. Or am I getting? As he
Yeah,
said, that's an option. Like, is it?
well, he does say that he supports people both. He says that people should both have both options, right? People should be able to leave Islam, and they shouldn't be attacked for leaving Islam, and people should be able to stay in Islam and have a reformed view of it, right? So,
Okay.
but he's pushing for the reform arguments, right? And I'm saying, don't. That's a waste of resources and time.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah. It's sort of
You
a
know,
finite resources and time. I'd
right?
rather go with you rather than
Yes, but what I'm saying, we could do that at the same time as uniting with people that we completely disagree with on some other things. I could go like, let's say a Muslim, not just a reform Muslim, even a fundamentalist Muslim, right? Let's say a fundamentalist Muslim comes and says, like, you know what, I think that it's bullshit that people are attacking you as an ex-Muslim because you're in Canada and you're not living under Islamic law, so
yeah.
you're gonna go to hell. But I'm gonna defend you right now for against prosecution by people here in a non-Islamic land, right? And I'm gonna be like, I disagree with this guy on almost everything, but I'm also gonna thank him for
Yeah.
for helping me out here, right? And if you have Muslims that are supporting gay rights, for example, Muslims, right, that don't even think reform is necessary, right? I'm
Yeah.
going to point out that I'm going to always say to them, I mean, unless they don't want me to say to them, like, I always debate people if they welcome me debating them, right? But I'm going to always point out that this is a contradiction between Islam and supporting gay rights. But at the same time, I'm going to thank them for fighting for gay rights, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Even
I
though
mean,
yeah.
yeah.
Even though it's hypocritical, it's still the end. They're still trying to fight for something good, I guess.
They are, because I think they're just better than their religion, and
Yeah.
I think they deserve credit for being better than their religion. And I think this is another problem I have with the reform movement. The reform movement takes a good work of some Muslims and try to give credit to the Islam for it. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
they themselves deserve the credit individually rather than giving the credit where the credit is not due. Because what the reform movement is trying to do when pointing at liberal Muslims is to reduce Muslims to just Muslim. But what I
Yeah.
say is Muslims are influenced by a much more than just Islam. By the way, I'm going to read what. By the way, thank you people who are donating with the super chat. So I'm going to read. Somebody says, "Be nice to them if they are good people, but don't support their deluded assigned fantasy. Islam is 100% anti-reform and must be sent into oblivion. Apostasy is the only way. Yeah, I agree with that totally. But what I'm saying is that Muslims are not just Muslims. I'm an atheist, right? But you know, my life is not just about atheism, right? I'm also a humanist. I'm also a gay rights advocate. I'm also a feminist, right? I'm also a husband, right? Like if you look at a vegan Muslim, nobody's going to say, oh, look, vegan Muslims, therefore Islam advocates veganism. No, nobody will say that. So if I point at Muslims that are fighting for democracy, that doesn't mean Islam is pro-democracy. That means that Muslim is influenced by many things, not just Islam. There's many competing ideologies that is influencing this individual, right?
It's like they're fighting against the actual Islam. Yeah.
One of them is Islam, but it seems like other competing ideologies are winning against this Islam that is influencing this person, right?
Yeah.
So just because they're doing, and just because they're doing good, that don't give credit to Islam for that. And people say that if they're not following Islam, they're not Muslim. But that's not true, because in Islam you learn that most Muslims are going to go to hell, right? If most Muslims are going to go to hell, that means most Muslims are basically not good Muslims. They're not, you know, they're Muslim, but they're not following their religion correctly. As long as you believe in Allah and Muhammad as his prophet and the Quran as the word of God, you're a Muslim. Even if you've never read that book, as long as you believe those things, you're a Muslim, even though you don't follow anything, right? So, yeah, but what do you think? Do you think that you could, like, do you think Majid deserves to be considered anti-Islam extremist, right?
Yeah, so I think with Majid, I think like the video I think I sent to you where he is trying to defend Muhammad raping Aisha, and then he compares Muhammad to the kings of Europe.
Right.
And that's when I was like, oh my God, because I've seen this guy called James O'Brien make that argument, and this guy has no idea about Islam, but Majid does. And so when he made that argument, I just thought, this is dodgy, and then compared Muhammad to Lot. And I'm like, no, compare Muhammad to Jesus Christ. That's the comparison. And so I understand not wanting to offend Muslims, but that seemed really deceptive to me. And I don't know, it didn't seem good.
I think I see, you know, when I agree with you. That's bullshit, right? I disagree with that. Like Muhammad, come on. Yeah, Muhammad's supposed to be a role model for all humans, right? So Lot is not a role model for all humans at all times, right?
Exactly.
I mean, and
how do you explain him doing that then? What do you think his thought process is?
I know, because I know he has a lot of experience with Muslims, right? And I think he kind of senses that talking shit about Muhammad is worse than talking shit about God himself, right?
But why is talking shit about Muhammad bad?
Well, because people love Muhammad. Like, yeah, it's like.
But why do they love him though?
It's been great. I mean, people have no idea. I mean, it's just something that. Here's the thing: most people that love Jesus don't even know life of Jesus himself, right? I'm not saying it's the same, right? Even though I think Christianity is absolute bullshit, I do agree that Islam is way more dangerous than Christianity. Okay.
Yeah.
A lot more. But I do think that people, when you are as a child raised to think that love Muhammad, love Jesus, love this figure, you know.
So we should feed their lives then, rather than the truth.
I mean, yeah, but I also know that you have this gut reaction. Even to this day, let me tell you how powerful this is. I have a Quran, right? And it has this English section and this Arabic section, right? And even to this day, you know, the wuzu, the Islamic washing to purify yourself, right?
Oh, yeah, the wudu, yeah.
Yeah, you have to do the wuzu before you could touch the words of God, right?
Yeah, it's so pure, like.
Yeah, because you can't touch it unless you're not pure right now, right? Even to this day, I have a problem touching the Arabic words on the page without having the wuzu. Right?
Wow.
That's how ingrained these things get to. Like, even to, you know, when the Dry Muhammad Day comes every year, I see so many cartoons of Muhammad, right? But even to this day, when I see some of the more grosser ones, I get like, oh my God, that's Muhammad, right? Like, that's how,
even now.
right? Even now, I'm like, feel like, holy shit, wow, these guys have guts. Like, wow, right? Even to this day, I feel like Muhammad is kind of like this holy sacred thing. Like, you can't really wash that off your head, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though I know, intellectually, I completely understand that that's absolute bullshit, right? But emotionally, it has been. Let me tell you this. My, you know, somebody, which I can't say, right, in Iran, because I don't want to get them killed, right, who is now an atheist, still can't eat pork, right?
Wow.
And he says, like, I want to eat pork, but just give it to me, but don't tell me it's pork. I just want to be able to enjoy pork without knowing that I'm eating pork, right?
Yeah.
So even though they're not Muslim anymore, like, and they drink alcohol, no problem, but this
Yeah.
idea of pork being disgusting and impure has been so ingrained in
Yeah.
your head that you can't get yourself to eating it, right?
But I think it's almost like kind of like OCD where you build up this obsession and then you've got to, but with OCD, you can sort of like, you can overwhelm it by having all this kind of like dirty stuff in terms of the pork and the alcohol and the pictures of Muhammad. And you can kind of like almost cure yourself, or I mean,
right. That's
so rather than in little sections, have a sort of be flooded with it. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah. I mean, that's my strategy. I try
yeah,
to desensitize people with
exactly.
these
Yeah.
things. All right, like I think a lot of Muslims in the West have been desensitized from cartoons of Muhammad because of thanks to Dry Muhammad Day cartoon. Day, something that actually Majid also supported. But 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 my
Yeah, I mean his cartoon as well, by the way. It was
yeah,
Jesus and Mo. So personally for me, I mean,
yeah,
I know it was Mohammed, but I don't think that was the best one. I mean, you could just put the Charlie Hebdo picture on your Twitter if you wanted to, if you really wanted to do it, but I don't
right.
know.
I mean, but what I'm saying is that like people like Majid are doing multiple things, right? When it comes to trying to reform Islam, I'm gonna say, well, I think that's absolute bullshit, right? That's not gonna work.
Do
But
you know he actually wants to reform it? I mean, do you actually think that's true? I mean, I'm not even sure it's true, to be honest, but I
well, I
mean,
mean, I can't read people's minds,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
I
yeah.
just take them for the word, right? But
Mm,
but at the same time, they're doing other things, not just trying to. Well, when it comes to trying to reform Islam, I'm like, yeah, okay, good luck with that. But
mm,
while you're doing that, I'm going to try to tell people, like, please come join my camp and trying to get people out of Islam altogether, right?
yeah.
But at the same time, when he goes out there and he was like, they put me on a list of extremists.
Yeah, I
Um,
know.
I'm like, well, that's bullshit, right? Do you agree that that's bullshit, right?
Yeah, well, the problem with that is though, he himself basically didn't speak too well of Robert Spencer and Pamela Geller. I've got a video on my channel, and he literally let this guy Usama Hassan at his organization. He let him basically slander Robert Spencer and Pamela Geller as
Right.
people who spread a hatred of Islam, and that's completely false. And so I think there's slight hypocrisy there myself. I don't really,
Well,
you know.
I mean, I don't know much. I mean, these people that you've mentioned, um, I've
I mean,
heard
Pamela
that.
Geller, she hosted a Draw Mohammed contest. She's an absolute
Yeah,
hero. She's like, so,
yeah.
but
Okay, I don't know. I haven't
oh,
done
okay.
my. The thing is that based on what I heard of them, that they go beyond just criticizing Islam. They're anti-Muslim as well.
No,
So I
no,
don't. I have to do my own research on those people. Okay,
yeah,
so
okay,
I'm not
yeah,
going to judge them.
yeah,
But
yeah,
but given that Majid is also considered anti-Muslim by this SPLC,
oh,
I'm very skeptical about who's actually anti-Muslim or not. Right? So I
yeah,
don't know,
yeah,
right? But I'm just saying that if Majid wins against these people that are just people putting people on extremist lists, and these are people that people use. This is a list people use, right? I mean,
yeah,
if Majid wins this, it helps me, it helps you, because it's a fight. It's a win for free speech. right?
I don't think he's fighting it for free speech. I think he's fighting it to protect his good name. That's how I see it. I don't think he really cares about free speech
I
because
don't. I yeah. I
he has censored me on his YouTube channel because I started basically questioning him, and I was censored on there. And I really don't. The censorship on the Twitter. I don't buy that myself. But I mean,
well, I mean, it's one thing to censor people on your own platform, right?
yeah.
But I mean, that's
But
not.
for criticizing, because
I
he
mean, it's
actually goes on all the time about free speech being like an absolute, and I don't, but
but here's the thing: we block people on our own channel and stuff like that too, right? And I don't think that's against free speech because free speech
but for
doesn't
what
mean.
though?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I have to ask the admin. We have rules, like for racism, homophobia, sometimes attacks.
Oh,
But the thing is that that's your. Here's the difference between what's free speech and what's not free speech. If I go to a public space and start handing out pamphlets and tell people to come to join Islam or become a Christian or leave religion, I should be able to do that. That's free speech, right? But if I all of a sudden go to a church, right, and tell people that, oh, you're all idiots, your God is a lie, that's their church. They're allowed to kick me out, right? If I go to if I go to someone's house and tell them that to listen to me because I'm going to bring Jesus to their heart, they're allowed to be like, no, we're having dinner, please leave our house, right?
yeah.
So, and I
But I
think
think it's because he is so absolute free speech, like the liberal free speech, that for him to have a YouTube channel, and then I would have thought his values, if free speech was one of his values, he would have fairly open free speech, unless
no,
the
but that's not.
racism.
But I don't think that's against free speech. I mean, if you have your own YouTube channel, if I come
Yeah.
comment there and you just be like, well, I just don't like this guy's face, right? For no other reason,
Uh,
and just block me, right? I think that's not against free speech. That's your YouTube channel, right? That's
uh,
your. But you can't come and tell me to. Okay, it's against free speech if you come and tell me to stop posting stuff on my YouTube channel, right? That's against free speech because this is my platform. I get to say whatever I want, right? If
yeah.
you come and say like to me, like stop posting this on your website, stop publishing this book, that's against free speech. But if you be like, I don't want this book in my library, that's not against free speech. That's your library, right?
I think it's also a few people on Twitter as well have been blocked by him when they start mentioning certain things where, you know, like for example, I mean, the Islamism, one of the big things he talks about, it makes
Right.
no sense because Muhammad himself was an Islamist. Majid's definition is someone who wishes to impose their version of Islam on
Right.
society. That's what Muhammad did. So it's complete, it's dead in the water. And even the Quran, 64% is about the kafir, the non-Muslim.
Right.
Muhammad only became successful after he made the hijrah to Medina and politics, 100,000 Arab Muslims. But he focuses so much on this, and he'll say Islamist extremism. It just means Islam, and he'll say jihadist terrorism, which means jihad. And
Right.
so these words, I see it personally as a semantic infiltration, where he's trying to change the language to
Right.
weaken our resolve against Islam. That's how I see it. But
And
again,
that's the part I agree with you on, right? The part that's the part I disagree with Majid because he says like he just says that if we make Islam and Islamism the same thing, which they are the same thing.
yeah,
If he says he says that we won't have the lexicon to fight to unite with Muslims that are not Islamists. But I would tell you that actually that's not true because I've talked to many Muslims that disagree with me on this. And when I tell them my perspective on this, most Muslims, even though that's the terminology I use, when I say Islam, it's basically the same as when Majid uses Islamism. But when I explain myself to Muslims, most Muslims so far have recognized my point and recognized that I'm not anti-Muslim.
are these Muslims in the West or where are they? Just like all over the world?
All over the world, yeah.
Okay.
So, but the thing is that it does take some conversation for me to get them there. And the example I use is that do you agree with Christianity? Don't you think God having a son is ridiculous? And they laugh and they're like, of course that's ridiculous. God can't have a son, right? I'm like, well, are you anti-Christian? They're like, no, I have Christian friends. I love Christians and blah, blah, blah. Like, there you go. You just said you find Christianity ridiculous and you're not anti-Christian. That's what so see, I'm anti-Islam. I find
Person
Islam
and idea.
ridiculous, but I'm not anti-Muslim. I usually just an example like that makes it work, right? And but that shows to me that I don't need to differentiate between Islam and Islamism for me to be able to convince Muslims that I'm not personally fighting them, right? That they can fight for Islam and I can fight for against Islam, and we could be friends at the same time, right? Another thing that Majid says that I disagree with is that if you go to Muslims and say that the Quran basically teaches what ISIS does, right?
Yeah.
Then you're basically on the same side of the ISIS people, the fundamentalists, and you're basically getting Muslims to go. You're selling the Islamist narrative, and you're getting Muslims to go pick up arms, right?
That makes no sense, by the way, because it's like saying to you, you are a rapist, and then you're going to go and rape. Obviously, you're not, because
No.
I can't make you do something by saying you are something. You know, it's like
yeah. I think I'm giving Muslims a little bit more credit.
Exactly.
Right. I think what's going to happen, either they're going to tell me, no, that's absolutely bullshit. That's not what Islam teaches. Or if I manage to convince them, they're not going to be like, oh, now I'm forced. Now I have to come find you and kill you. Right. I think they're either going to tell me that I'm talking bullocks, or they're going to say like, okay, well, you convinced me. This is bullshit. I'm not a Muslim anymore. Right.
And if they were going to kill you that easily, they're always a bad person. You know what I mean? It was like, if that's how quick they can just, like, you know.
Right. Yeah, I think exposing Islam for what it is makes most Muslims leave Islam. They're not looking, even if they're trying to learn what Islam is to follow it, they're not looking to atheists to, like, let me see what this atheist says so I could become a better Muslim, right? they're not using us as role models for what. If they listen to us, they're listening to us to see what the problem we have with Islam is, not how to follow Islam more correctly, right?
Yeah.
And we're not doing it. And guess what? We are doing this on our own platforms, right? We're not going to Muslims and telling them to, hey, listen to us. This is, we're not going to, the Muslims that are listening to us, they came and found us, right?
Yeah. It's one of the things I think, because I would love to have a bigger publicity of your kind of groups just in the open.
Right.
Like, even, like I say, Imagine the WAS, to properly get this out there. Because I think if we had ultimate free speech, we could do massive damage to Islam in a short amount of time. It's only because of the, you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't think it would take, because the internet as well, the internet all over the world, isn't it? So, it's.
But to give credit, okay, so again, I think what Majid is saying, I completely disagree with that. But and I think the ex-Muslim movement deserves more attention than the Reform movement. But also to give credit to Majid, he's one of the very few people that keeps talking about the ex-Muslim movement, right? So even though I completely disagree with what he's trying to achieve with Muslims, I also have to be. There are not that many people out there that are mentioning ex-Muslims, right? So when Majid goes out there and says, like, we need to support ex-Muslims, I'm going to be like, thank you, Majid. I'm not going to be like, I don't want your support because I think the reform is bullshit. I'm going to be like, thank you for being one of the few voices to talk about ex-Muslims. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think, that doesn't mean that I have to hold back on my disagreement, right? At the same time I thank him, I could be like, I could still say, well, I think reform is bullshit. Do you know what I mean? We could do those things at the same time. These things are not contradictory. I think people are trying to put everybody like, oh, I think what you're saying is bullshit, so I'm going to just not support you 100%, right? I think we could fight people's ideas in one sense and also support them in some other senses. I mean, if I could do that with Muslim fundamentalists, I should be able to do that with reformists as well, right? Like,
I think it's just the case that, like, what they're selling, it doesn't make sense. That's the problem with me. It's like you make more sense. Just once you find something wrong, stop doing it. But with them, you want to ignore certain bits, and what it does is it always leaves it alive. It leaves the Quran there on the shelf for the next generation to actually say, wait a minute, we've got to go and kill the kuffar, you know? And I just think you're having this, like, even if you like reform all Muslims, it's always going to be there, and some Muslims are going to say, "Wait a minute," you know. So,
but it's not just about them, you know. Even if Islam turns into something that is not going to be killing kafirs and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
it's still a delusion. It's still wrong. It still has no evidence. I mean, atheist advocate. Atheist activism was always about fighting for the truth, whether it's harmful or not, right? This is bullshit, whether it's harming anybody or not. And that's even if Islam one day turns into something that nobody is being harmed by, I'm still gonna fight it, right?
To attack it even there.
I'm still gonna attack it because I'm still like, okay, I don't, yeah, but you still believe this voodoo magic, you know, sky daddy thing, and you have no evidence for it. Why do you believe in this thing?
I was going to say though, what are your thoughts on, for example, the birth rates of the atheists? I think Black Pigeon Speaks had a video where basically they're going extinct in terms of versus religious people. What are your thoughts, you know, in that?
Yeah, I mean that's what something Muslims have an advantage. They have more babies than we do. But what we have to do is we need to basically.
But I mean, just all religious people. All religious people just generally have more.
Yeah, but we need to reach out to their kids. That's what we need to do. So that's the only chance we have. And that's why I think betting on the ex-Muslim movement is very important, because I think the reform movement is a distraction, right? And I think it's getting so many voices that could have been fighting for abandoning Islam is taking them away to this false hope of the reform movement, right?
Yeah, because I see it sort of like in the West, we think that Europe is burning to the ground, but it's okay because we still have the chance of reform. And I'm just thinking that's not going to happen. So I just wonder when we're going to breaking point, because I would rather start working on the atheism, or at least the ex-Muslim, rather than just having this like last hope, because it's just it's based on lies, you know what I mean? So
but I do want to criticize something that I noticed in your videos though. I do think that what you're seeing this fight to be a fight between Islam and the West, right? And
not the West. I mean, it's India, sir. I mean, the Hindus and the Sikhs, you know. So
it's a global fight, okay? And it's not a fight to defend the West. It's a fight to defend our planet.
Yeah.
Because this is a fight not just for Western countries. This is a fight for Islamic countries, because. Yeah. And I think a lot of people in England or in the United States, they're playing this as a defense against this threat, and they're just like, this is bullshit, just don't bring it here. And I'm gonna tell you, it's gonna come there. There's no way you can stop it. It's gonna come. Okay.
I've got one problem here. I know. I hear you say like these ideas, they don't respect borders, but I think that argument fails in that Poland aren't letting Muslim immigrants in, and you have to show me that there are Muslim militias rising up in Poland and Czech Republic, Hungary, that are not based on immigrants at all, and that's not happening. So
it's not happening. But if the globe is taken over by Islam, I don't care. It doesn't matter that in the short term you manage to.
Yeah, well, you could say about Jerusalem. I mean, or Israel surrounded by Muslims trying to kill them, and they're still surviving, aren't they? So
yeah, but at some but what I'm saying is that this is, for ideas to pass borders, you don't need humans to carry them. Okay.
No, but the point is, you have to show me where the ideas are springing up with no immigrants. Where's that happening?
Yeah, here's the thing. This is a disease, right? This is a disease.
No, I know, I totally agree.
Okay, let's say that you have a country like Poland, and you manage to build walls and stuff, and you didn't let any Muslims in your country, right? And you think you're not being affected by it just because you don't have any terrorist attack in your own country. That's not true. The thing is that this idea is spreading, right? And these people, first of all, they have already gotten so much into the politics and stuff for voices like you not to be able to, at some point, they're already in government in US. They have already too much influence in UK.
Yeah.
These immigration policies that you're asking for is not going to happen, you know. And even if it does happen at some point, they already have enough Muslims everywhere for this ideology to spread. Okay.
Oh yeah, but
So,
I mean, in the
but
UK and the US, that's different. You see, in
right, but
Poland,
I
you know what I
understand
mean,
that. I
and
understand that. But I'm
Japan,
just saying, like,
Japan.
imagine a world where Islam is so dominant and Poland is not affected by it yet. Do you really think that is going to, you know, the fact that the world is being influenced by it is not going to affect Poland? Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I understand that, but
Like,
I think at that certain stage, those countries, Eastern Europe, that bloc, will unite and form one country, or something like that would happen. They would have because those countries also they're very united with Christianity, I believe, and the sort of
right.
that is still present. Whereas in the Western Europe, we have destroyed that unifying force.
But
And this is
see,
with the atheism. The atheism, I don't think you can unify around a lack of belief. I don't know about you, but I think you turn to like the materialism, the hedonism, the kind of the individualism, and that doesn't do well. I don't think for a group. That's what I'm going to say. You know.
well, okay. So what I'm suggesting we do
Yeah.
is stop playing defense, okay,
Mm.
and go on the offense, right?
Oh, I want that too at the same time. Yeah.
And the offense, by going on the offense, I mean it's going to their homeland and spreading atheism, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you know, you hit them at their base, right?
Yeah.
And I do think that a lot of people in the West care about Islam only when it affects them, right?
No, I know this, but I think it's sort of like if you don't protect your own country, your own nationality, your own sovereign nation, then you're not like on the plane. You put your own mask on first, don't you? And then you help the other person. You can't run around helping
Right.
everyone else, and then So
Yeah, okay, I get that. I accept that because I do agree that if we don't have a base for you to, you know, if all of a sudden in Canada you can't criticize Islam, we're
exactly
fucked, right?
the M103 thing, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. If it turns in, if enough Muslims get their way in Canada and that happens, then Atheist Republic is based in Canada, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So we don't have a home to be able to go and challenge Islam in Islamic countries. So I get that
Yeah.
argument, right? But
Mm.
I do hope that people that are advocating these arguments are not just about I'm just gonna build this wall around me and the world be damned. Just don't bring your shit here, right?
No, I
So
do a bit. It sounds harsh because
right.
I sometimes think, oh well, they can go and die over there. They can have be subjugated and persecuted, and at least it's not over here. It sounds bad, but it's like I think you can't solve the entire world's problems, and this idea of just going around the world trying to sort of,
But the world is much more connected than people realize, right?
well, I mean, it's only connected if you let these people come in the first place,
No, I mean,
yeah.
no, I mean, I think it's more connected than that, right? I mean, if,
Well, for example, like in Germany, the EU, Angela Merkel invited, I think, almost like 2 million Muslim migrants, basically, and Europe is dead now. So she could have chose not to do that with the Alan Kurdi picture on the beach, the baby.
yeah.
So that was a choice.
See, for example, this is how the
Mm,
world connected. Let's say Saudi Arabia is now in the head of the Human Rights Council in the UN, right? And
mm,
now let's say Malaysia is going to, let's say 20 years down the road, you see actually Malaysia is actually way more, and you know, Islamic than it is right now, and Indonesia as well, right?
mm,
And Turkey as well, right? And all of these countries all of a sudden have so much more money and weight in the UN now, right?
mm.
And um, and now in a country that has not been touched by Islam at all, there's a human rights violation. But these countries are not going to condemn that just because they don't want to be like hypocrites, because they're doing the same thing in their own country. And they basically have their own agenda not to condemn a human rights violation that has nothing to do with Islam, but they just want to make sure that the politics of that doesn't come and bite them in the, you know, as later on, right? I'm just saying
Yeah.
that these ideas spreading in the world will affect you if, at some
Mm.
point, even if you have not a single Muslim in your country. You know what I mean?
But
So,
I think it's
and I think
yeah.
we should start caring about our planet more than we care about our countries, right? Because or my fellow,
Oh,
um,
hello, are
what?
you back?
Yeah, my camera. I'm just
Yeah,
gonna fix this. Right. I think you can hear me, right?
yeah, yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know what
yeah.
happened to my camera, but
Yeah.
so I don't think is I don't understand why I should care about people that are closer to me more than people that are far a little bit farther. Like I don't understand what distance has to do with the level of sympathy I have for people.
Yeah, I think that's sort of like the nationalism versus the globalism argument, where it's like everyone's equal. And like I say, again, I just think it's better to secure your own group first, your own
Why?
nation,
Why?
because if you don't do that, then how are you going to help others?
Okay,
You want to
but
have.
the argument that you're making is not a nationalistic argument. You're making a practical argument for helping people close to you, right? Because the argument that you're making is also a globalist argument. You're saying that you have to help people. If you said I have to help people in my country because they matter to me more, that would be a nationalistic argument. But if you're saying I have to help people in my country because we need the base to help the world, that's not a nationalistic argument. You're also making a practical argument for helping the planet.
And when you say help them, how do you mean? Like militarily? What, like free
No,
speech? What?
no. Okay, so when I
Define.
hear when I hear that 5% of people in Saudi Arabia have given up on Islam, right?
Yeah.
That tells me that if we have achieved that much with that low level of free speech,
Yeah.
imagine how far we can go if we spread these ideas more, right?
So how would you improve that? So.
Well, look at what we have done, right?
Mm.
We have reached out to so many people have left Islam because of Atheist Republic, and now we're making our podcast and we're talking about Islam. We're talking about Muslims as people, and we're reaching out to them as And actually, this is one important thing. By befriending these people before telling them why their ideology is shit, right?
Mm.
So, and by telling them to not hate us for mocking their ideologies, and please go ahead and mock us in return, by trying to convince them that mocking, that their religious rules apply to it does work. Like I have started to record my conversations with Muslims, and most people think Muslims are just going to just like over. If you do take the time to explain your position to them, it's there's a lot more chance for them to change their opinions than more people realize. The thing is
Yeah.
that in a country that atheism is 10 or 12%, you have already reached a percentage that is harder to grow anymore. But in the countries that the percentage are 2 or 5%, many people haven't left their religion because they have never even considered it,
Yeah,
right?
I think
And
we can do certain things like, for example, we can like stop buying Saudi oil, that kind of thing, to sort of stop giving them so much money to, you know,
no, I think you just should do what they're doing. Learn from them. Go to, they're coming to the West and spreading their shit and ideology. I want to go to Saudi Arabia and
what do you mean,
tell
like actually physically go over there? I mean,
no, no, no. By finding the activists there, giving them
mm,
a platform, giving them a voice. Like our podcast, the Secular Jihadist podcast,
mm,
is being downloaded so much in Saudi Arabia, in Egypt, in Pakistan.
yeah,
I can't see how much is being downloaded in Iran because most people there download these things with proxies and stuff. But I'm pretty sure there is being downloaded too. In Indonesia, in Malaysia, we need more people. This is why I want more people to start talking about the ex-Muslim movement, because I want more people, more atheists, more Islam people, more skeptics. Skeptic movement. That's a big movement that is not talking about Islam. I want more. I want to
yeah.
make this not a taboo to talk shit about Islam, right? And I want to find ways for more people to find us, because they're a lot of them are desperate for these ideas. And guess what? Even people that hate us, they're curious to what we have to say. There's so many people on Atheist Republic that tell us that they came to fight us and now they left Islam, right?
So do you think you would sort of kind of trigger a revolution in Saudi Arabia or something like that, or is that possible?
I don't know if I could predict the future, but I do
Yeah,
think
very.
that I think that I have a bottom up approach more than a top down approach, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think that you can change policies or governments or laws without changing the mindset of the people,
Because
right? And
they can't vote in democracy, can they? It's like
no,
it's
but
theocracy.
they yeah, they can, but you can't hold. You can't hold a dictatorship with only 1% support, right? Like you
But I mean,
can't.
if they have all the guns and all the weapons and all the, I mean,
Right,
I
but
mean,
at some point, the only way for a market for you to open yourself to the world market and the economy to work is for people to get rich, right, and for people to make money, right? You can't just you can and for that to happen, when people make more money, at some point they're gonna demand more rights. They're gonna demand equality, and the
yeah,
thing is that you can't hold this shit forever if people don't want it, right? It's People will at some point, either slowly or unfortunately right now it's going the other way, but in Malaysia, for example, and in Turkey, it's going the other way, not just because the government wants it, right? Is being done by a lot of ground
yeah,
support.
because yeah.
Dictatorships need support, even though it's not a democracy. They need a lot of support on the ground to be able to do the things that they want to do.
Because you have the people actually voting in the Erdogan, so they actually want it. So I don't. It makes no
So
sense really. They're voting
what
for
it,
their subjugation.
yeah, so we need to go and talk to these people. We need to
Yeah,
go and
yeah,
change their ideas, and we need to. Here's the thing, these Muslims are the main victims of Islam, right?
exactly, yeah, exactly.
And they're the victims of Islam, and they don't even know it, right? So the thing is that we're fearing that will happen one day in the UK or in Canada and US. People are like, "Oh, this is great." Well, guess what? It's already happening in
No, I know.
Saudi Arabia,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So as much as we should try to prevent these happening in our countries, we should go and help people that are already suffering from the things that we're fearing from, right?
yeah. Because I
And
mean, in this country, we have this guy called Jacob Rees-Mogg, and everyone's criticizing him for being against gay marriage. And like in your country, they're hanging gay people. So I mean, the
right,
comparison is just, and they're going berserk over him,
this
just gay marriage. It's
and
bizarre.
these are the things that again, this is the way we win the war of ideas, right? There's so many other allies that we should have that we don't have. The gay rights activists in the West, they're not talking much about persecution. Some of them are, but then most of them are not talking about the persecutions of gays in Islamic countries. They're
Yeah,
not. And even people, vegans like you, right?
yeah,
They're not talking. Most of them are not talking about the cruelty of the halal practice of Islam, because
yeah.
it's their culture, right? They're not talking about that, right? There's so many things that people are fighting for. I want these people that are fighting for these ideas to also start shitting on Islam, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because
Yeah,
yeah, so we need to go to these people and point out the hypocrisy for them not, for the fact that they're not talking. I guess at some point, if everybody is talking about these things, Muslims in these countries get exposed to it, because you know what, these people watch American movies, they watch they get their entertainment from these Western countries, right?
yeah,
And if more and more, if these ideas are more and more challenged in in if it's okay for it to be challenged,
yeah,
right? Like even you saw the recent Australian ad with all the gods of all these religions came in, and they were like, it was an ad for lamb. Even they didn't show Muhammad, right? Because
yeah,
it's such a
yeah.
taboo thing to do. But if we make these okay, at some point these countries, the problem is it's going the other way around. The Western countries are trying to be more accommodating to Islamic sensitivities, right?
Exactly, because it's also like
But
the bigotry. They think if they say anything against the Muslims, they'll go crazy. And also, you've got like Salman Rushdie in the UK, the
right,
Satanic Verses. The Muslims like firebombing bookshops when that happened. So I think
right.
now they almost think, Jesus Christ, if we criticize Muhammad now, we've got 3 million. What will happen? The whole country could burn down. So it's
So this is it's up
yeah,
to us to go to Muslims and tell them that you guys should be okay with us mocking you, because
yeah,
everybody gets just this is why we need to reach out to Muslims as well, right? The Muslims that won't kill us, because we need to tell them, like, if we need to be able to shit on each other's ideas, right?
Yeah.
Without hating each other. Because if you're against the extremists, they're using the hate against us for their narrative. And guess what? We have some bigots on our side as well, right? We have Nazis and stuff, and they're using the hate for your religion for their narratives as well, right?
But they're not extremists, though, are they? Actually, I mean, that makes no sense.
Let's say that the skinheads that go and actually want to kill Muslims, right? Just because
I mean, the Muslim extremists, they're actually good Muslims who kill for Allah. So
no,
I mean,
no, yeah, but I'm talking. Okay, the Muslims that are not following Islam, right?
Yeah, so they're
and not basically based on their religion, they're not good people, but they themselves are actually good people, right?
Yeah.
And they think they're good people based on Islam. Me and you and them have more in common than the people that actually pick up arms and or go out and beat each other up, right? Yeah. Even though we think these Muslims are hypocrites, right? They're completely on a different camp than those people that actually are okay with hurting other people. Okay?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying to them is, like, let me tell you why your Islam is shit, and you come and tell me why atheism is shit, right? And let's just do that peacefully, so that those Nazis, or whatever they want to call them, and those jihadists, because even though I think they're following your religion better than you are, right? Yeah. But you disagree with that. They are using these disagreements to convince our camp that we should hurt each other. But if me and you can get together and shit on each other's ideas without hurting each other, and do that publicly, and if we go after I tell you how stupid you're being for believing in these things, and then you tell me how stupid I'm being for thinking the world cannot have a creator, and then after that we go have non-alcoholic drinks with each other, right? If we could do that together, we are basically stealing the narrative of those jihadists that you claim that don't represent Islam, that I claim they represent Islam, and you claim they don't represent Islam. At least we both think they're shit, right? We're stealing the narrative away from them, because they're using these disagreements to fuel the hate for us with each other. But we can show each other that we could completely disagree with each other and still not hate each other, right? And if
I think also, like, the actual really bad ones who want to do violence, I think they're the minority. So if we could just help the ones who are the good ones to get out, that they can actually overpower the really bad ones. That makes sense. I don't think, like, I don't think the majority honestly believe in killing and stuff, but it's just they go along with the,
but they're giving, but in their ignorance, they're making the Quran, they're giving it legitimacy, and making that small percentage of people that actually do go read it and follow it, they're increasing that small percentage by giving it legitimacy, right?
Yeah.
But they're doing that unintentionally, right? But I personally think that if more Muslims allowed us to shit on their religion in the name, by recognizing that we're not bigots, right?
Yeah.
If our ideas would win, right? So that's why I'm trying to get more Muslims to just be okay with us criticizing Islam and not putting us in the same camp of the bigots by allowing us to do that, right?
Yeah.
And I think if more Muslims do that, then we will be able to infiltrate their communities more. I mean, I'm waiting for a day for a mosque to invite an ex-Muslim to come speak to their audience, right? Right? And like, we're not afraid of disagreements. If Islam is true, it should be able to take criticism, right? I want to see that.
I think it's sort of like this fear and oppression. It's like a circle where basically they fear any criticism, and so they have to, like, do violence. And so, you know, if they're so happy with Allah and they think he's perfect, then they should be able to take criticism, really. But you know,
Lala is saying that I'm convincing him to join Islam by making these arguments. Right. But and so I also want to say that I do think that the problem, another danger I see by saying like, oh, let's not let Muslims in our country, right? The thing is that we will lose that reaching out to Muslim narrative if we do that. What, you know, I'm afraid that, you know, like Ayan here CLE,
yeah.
and many ex-Muslims came to. I mean, how would you go about doing that? Like, like if we wanted to, let's say we want to not let Muslims in our country.
So I think one of the main issues is if you watch this video by David Wood called "The Three Stages of Jihad," it pretty much follows a pattern where as the Muslims increase, it gets worse and worse. And so in the UK 50 years ago, it might have been less than 1%. I think in the US it's less than 1%. And in Europe now, I think France is 8% and the UK is 5%. And as it gets higher and higher, you have bigger problems. And I think around 20 or 30%, you have genocide against like non-Muslims and stuff. So I think it's about keeping it below 1% effectively. But because even Douglas Murray has said we need less Islam in the UK, not less Muslims, but less Islam, basically.
Right, but here's the thing. Let's say that you want to. I just can't imagine how that even would look. Right. Let's say that you want to stop Muslim immigration to your country. Are you going to put a religious test? And like, how would that look like? I can't even imagine how that would look like.
Oh, I think Stephen Crowder had a joke where he said you got to draw a picture of Muhammad or something, or
right.
possibly burn a Quran, or I don't know. You know,
I think here's what I would.
You could like, couldn't you? Obviously, to Kia. So I guess that's a bit of a trouble.
I don't think you can do. The thing is that anything I've heard, it's not practical at all, right?
So what I actually think would be easier is a full ban on Muslims, and then what I would do is I would try. I basically, because for example, the Muslims in the UK now, they're going crazy. You know, raping children, blowing people up. So I would focus on trying to reform them, because personally, I don't think adding more Pakistani Muslims into the UK, people from this third world, let's be honest,
how would you stop? How would you screen them? Like, what would your, like, let's say somebody's applying, you're gonna ask them what's your religion? Is that what you're gonna do?
It's really simple. Basically, Pakistan is virtually 100% Muslim. Afghanistan, I think, 100% Muslim. Iran, you know, these places, Islam has worked really well. There's no one else there, so you just ban the entire country. I mean, it sounds hard.
But look at what Trump did. He didn't ban Saudi Arabia.
No, I know, but you see, he was an idiot, and obviously the oil and the weapons and stuff. But the point is,
but the thing is that if you ever want to do that, you would probably have to do that with Saudi Arabia, and nobody's going to do that with Saudi Arabia.
No, I know exactly, but I mean that's sort of. I mean, do Saudis emigrate to other countries? Do they sort of?
Saudis own 3% of US's economy, I think.
No, I mean, are they sort of big in terms of leaving Saudi Arabia? I know Pakistan comes over to the UK.
They're big in their influence is actually worse than people. What they do is they spread their ideology. So they will come and make even the Muslims that were not that big of an extremist, they will change them. Like they are even worse, right?
No, I know, because they brought the mosques over to Germany and UK, trying to sort of. But the point is, they were working on an original base of Muslims. They weren't just going to like Japan and like building mosques in Japan.
Okay, let's see. So you can't. So you also have to do this with Indonesia. You have to do this with Malaysia. Are you going to ban people from Malaysia and Indonesia?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well,
that's never good. I'm sorry, but that's never going to happen. Indonesia.
No, I know.
Yeah, no country will. No country will do that.
Why?
It's just not going to happen. It's just such an economically, if the UN will get involved. I mean, this is going to be such a.
Are they going to start wars? No, I think the way I see it basically
it's just something that I just, based on following, I just don't think. I just can't. You might hope for it, right? But I can
No,
never
no, no, no.
imagine, for example, UK comes saying like, yeah, Malaysia is an ally, but we're going to ban all travelers from Malaysia to UK. It's just never going to happen. I just can't
Yeah,
see it ever happening.
yeah. How I see it basically, Islam is the disease like HIV, and Muslims are the carriers. So they're not the problem, but they're carrying this disease like Ebola. And so the more in the country, the more problems. Obviously, in the UK, we're done for now because we have. There's no chance. I mean, the Muslim population doubles every 10 years, so we've got
Right.
decades. I mean,
So
literally decades.
given that you're done for, the
Yeah.
strategy has to be reaching out to Muslims, right?
Well, the strategy I would do is block all further immigration and then work on the ones we
But
have.
but you see, but the thing
Try and
is,
help
like,
them leave Islam.
given that you already have so much Muslims there, do you see how that would backfire?
Why would it
But,
backfire?
but UK being like, yeah, we're gonna have no more Muslims, and you have a country
Well,
so full of Muslims, and then your
no,
government all of a sudden
I,
saying we're gonna have no more, like,
no,
with such an anti-Muslim approach by the government in a
I'll
country full,
explain. No.
yeah, yeah,
Basically, what I would do is, alongside this, I would have a pure propaganda campaign where we are showing all the truth about Muhammad, Islam, the Quran, having pictures of Muhammad on billboards, all that sort of stuff. And I'd also set up some sort of witness protection for Muslims who want to leave Islam, because obviously they might get attacked by their families. And it sounds bizarre, I know, but the point is, if you don't do that, the only other option is the UK becoming an Islamic state. That's the end
But
result.
you see, my more okay. So Lala is saying that most terrorists are coming from specific countries, not from Indonesia and Malaysia, right? So he wants to ban on very specific countries, I think.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, I mean,
But
but
but the thing is that I'm more worried about the globe becoming swept over by Islam. Do you know what I mean? Rather than a specific country, because I think you could be in this. Oh, this is my tiny little island. I'm just gonna not let people in, and I'm gonna be all good. But once you're comparing it to AIDS, I'm just saying that how long is your tiny little island gonna stand once everything, the whole world is swept over by AIDS, right?
no, I know what you mean because like it's like the Nazi argument to just stay out of World War II, and then if the Nazis own Europe, eventually they're going to try and take. I get that argument, but I think I wouldn't just be doing that. I would be doing a propaganda campaign to try and get
Oh.
Muslims in Europe to leave
Okay,
Islam.
by the way, Lala is angry. I misrepresented Lala. He said he doesn't want to ban countries. So I just want to make sure I didn't misrepresent.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that your approach. So I just don't. Here's the thing: the ban that I would suggest would be a ban that would stop any homophobe or any kind of person that would potentially like. I would find the things that
But they could lie, though, couldn't they? Why couldn't they lie?
I know, but this goes to lie about Islam. But you're saying
Yeah,
specific
but I
countries.
mean,
But
no, but
then
I
if
mean, you
it's
got a
okay, so let's say specific countries, right? But now that the
yeah,
UK is gonna have so many Muslims, right? They could come
yeah.
from the UK, right? They could
What go
come
to the
from
UK?
France. France, there's so many Muslims in France. So if you ban people from Afghanistan, um, where else? I don't know which
No, but
countries.
I mean, most of the countries in the Middle East are like virtually 100% anyway. So it's all Muslims. I mean, so
I know, but I'm just saying, like, let's say you ban specific countries, right? But
yeah,
first of all, what you just done is that you mark your country to these people that want to sell this jihadist narrative. You mark your
yeah.
country as an anti-Muslim country, right? So now your country is the number one target, right? All right. So
Well, the thing is, how I see it is, it's
here's
like during
what I see is what the thing is: Islam religions in general, they love to be the victims, right? So, when you go become anti-Muslim, those specific Muslims might hate it, but the
no, I'm not
religious
anti-Muslim.
leaders, they
No,
no, I'm not saying
I'm in
you,
favor.
whatever you,
Yeah, yeah,
but I'm not you specifically, you in general,
no,
right? Like I'm just saying
yeah,
anybody when you put a policy that specifically targets individuals, the Islamic leaders, they look at this and they see dollar signs. They see like, oh, recruitment strategies right here. Thank you, right? This is why so many of these jihadist people, they like love Trump, right? They say they
yeah,
hate Trump, or they love people coming. The people that most enjoy seeing Muslims being beaten down in the streets are the Islamic leaders,
yeah.
right? They look at
Propaganda,
that
sort of,
and
yeah.
they see opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So, and I see uh, the job of people like us that are fighting Islam is to, the only way to fight Islam is to befriend Muslims, and to for them to see us as critics, but friendly critics. You know what I mean? And I
I
think
think with
that's the
me
only
though,
chance we have. And if I go out and say we need to stop letting Muslims in Canada, I don't really see how I could say that and also be like, but I'm on your side, right? I don't know how I could tell them that I'm defending their rights while fighting their ideas when I'm also advocating for a ban on Muslims to Canada. You know,
well,
see, that's it. Yeah,
yeah.
go on.
What I think is, it's like, I fully accept that we are at war with Islam. It's the
Right.
Ummah versus Kufar, and I have no doubts about this. And you look at Turkey. Turkey was Christian in the 1300s. Now it's 100% Muslim because they gradually increased. So if
Not
we do nothing,
100%, but yeah.
well, yeah, no, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's a Muslim country. So the point
Right.
is, if you don't do anything, we will be taken over due to demographic change. Muslims will just outbreed us. This is how it works. So we have two choices: to address it or not address it. So it sounds harsh banning Muslim
I,
countries,
I
but
understand you want to address it. I just don't see how that's practical, right? I don't see, first of all, I don't see how you would carry it out, right? And
you just
second of
stop.
all, some Muslims
Yeah,
from specific countries, right? So you're
yeah,
saying every single country that is Muslim majority, every single one of them.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's 22 Arab countries, plus some non-Arab countries, which is Iran, Indonesia,
So, for example,
Bangladesh,
yeah.
Pakistan, Malaysia, all of that. I think that's a big chunk of the planet,
So
right?
what I'd say is,
And then you're gonna have a trade
yeah,
war in retaliation for that. These countries are also
no,
gonna be like, well, we're gonna stop
no.
doing trade with you if you're not gonna let our citizens come to
The
your
point is,
country. Yeah,
I wouldn't, during World War II, advocate actual Germans coming to the UK, or Nazis or Japanese who are against Americans going to America. When you're at war, you have to acknowledge you're at war, and you have to, it's wartime. And we don't realize we're at war, and we're letting lots and lots of immigrants come into Europe who actually completely are in opposition to our values. And I just, basically, the point is, civilization, it's reached a point where we only have apathy and tolerance. So we have to tolerate everything, and we're
but
apathetic because we have nothing to unify us. We're just unified by our decadence and materialism. And it's like the end of the Roman Empire. We're basically, it's coming to an end. That's the sort of the point, really. And
see,
I
okay,
think
but
the
I
end
think the
result, it will be civil war. I imagine. I almost guaranteed.
well, I hope it doesn't get
Mm,
there. But if it does, before it gets there, before we have to try everything we can
mm.
to. The thing is that what I'm saying is that I think the right approach is to bring to these countries the same thing that they're bringing to us, right? They have been very successful at what they're doing, so let's learn from them, right?
Hmm.
So I think if they have been successful at turning the UK into what you don't like right now, right?
Yeah.
Then use the same tactic. If it worked
Well,
for them, why can't it work for us?
yeah,
Why
there's
can't we?
one
Like
issue.
Omar
The
is
one,
saying that right now in Egypt is 12% Coptics and 5 to 7% atheists, right? And I want, how many? What's the percentage? What's the percentage of Muslims in Britain, UK right now?
I
What's the
think it's five
percentage?
percent.
Right. So if they could do that with 5% of Muslims in the UK,
Yeah, it's one issue that.
in UK, why can't we do that with the 5 to 7% of atheists in Egypt? Why
Yeah.
can't we do
So
that? Because
there's
then
one
we're
issue.
targeting the sources of the problem.
Yeah. The issue we have is there is no freedom of speech in the UK. So do you know Tommy Robinson, the British
Yeah.
guy who speaks? So basically, people like him and anyone who says what he says, Anne-Marie Waters, they are criticised as evil Nazi white supremacists, and the Muslims can say whatever they want. They can do the Al Quds Day march. I think it's the anti-Israel sort of stuff. So they can do all of this, and even the rape gangs. You know, it's all protecting the Muslims, and so we don't have freedom of speech. The government, at the very least, should protect freedom of speech, but they don't do that. All they do is protect Muslims, and even
Right.
the guy who put bacon outside the mosque, they arrest
it's
him. He
it's
goes to
hard,
prison, and
but it's becoming more and more difficult
yeah,
to stop speech, right? Even in
yeah,
Iran, where Facebook and YouTube and Twitter are disallowed,
yeah,
people find ways to get around it. People,
yeah,
I mean, one of the best allies that we have actually on our side is porn, because you can't because guess what? In these countries, porn are illegal as well, right? And you can't separate teenage boys from porn, right? So
yeah.
because you ban porn, these boys will find a way to get around whatever filters you have introduced, and trying to get to porn also gives them the skills to eventually find our content as well, right? So
Not in the
this
same sites.
maybe something, I don't know, but I'm just saying that I learned from, I know that banning porn is a big mistake, because you're basically forcing people how to learn to get the content that you're not allowing
Yeah,
them to get. But I'm telling you, these people, even China, with all this technology that is trying to ban any criticism of of Chinese government, people that want to get that content, they get it, right?
yeah.
People will find a way to get to the content, and it's not as easy as before to silence the speech.
But I think it's also the case that they enforce, like the guy with the bacon outside the mosque. They see that as a hate crime, and that guy goes to prison and gets killed. And it's just when they're using the police against us. Even the police say we are monitoring hate speech, and hate speech is basically criticizing Islam. And this is full on 1984 George Orwell. And once you have that situation, I mean, I don't know what you do. I mean, I guess the dark web or something, and even Google. You know,
I mean,
Google with the
no, I
whole.
mean, you have in Iran. That's why in Iran there's an app called Telegram that
Mm,
is code and double in something, encoded something that people don't use. People don't use Facebook to talk about politics. People use Telegram because there's no way that the government could hack that one, right? So, but people know how to make sure to spread these ideas without I mean, it's becoming harder. I mean, come on, if our secular jihadist podcast is being downloaded in Saudi Arabia,
mm,
Richard Dawkins' book has been, so many people in Arab countries has been translated and been downloaded more than millions of times, right? So these
yeah,
ideas are spreading, and we have to, and this is another thing I have to say, and I think Ali Rizvi mentioned this. He says that people like Richard Dawkins, people like um, Carl Sagan or Bernard Russell, these people have done more to de-radicalize people than any of this reform argument, right? And
yeah,
what we have to do is to spread these ideas more than before. And if people like Ali Rizvi picked up Carl Sagan and decided that they're an atheist back when the internet wasn't that this much spreading all over the world, I think it should be easier now too. I think it should be easier for us to spread these ideas in Iran, in Egypt. I mean, look at Omar is in the live chat, and he's doing, people like Omar, they are spreading these ideas in Egypt. We know
mm,
people that are spreading these ideas in Saudi Arabia. We know people that are spreading these ideas in Iraq. What we need to do, we don't need to go reinvent the wheel, because these atheist activists are already there. We just
mm,
need to go find them, and we need to give them a platform. We need to, nobody's giving them a platform. Nobody's giving them attention. We need to, because guess what? If the free speech that we have left here, we need to use it and give these speeches to people that need a voice, that they can't say these things publicly in Iran or in Saudi Arabia. We need to bring them our own platform, and we need to give them a voice. And it is making a difference. It is making a difference. Atheism is on the rise in the Middle East.
mm.
Okay, it is, and you think it might not be a uniting factor, but it is when you're being fucked by Islam, right? It becomes anything that will tell you that that's bullshit. That becomes a uniting factor, right?
Yeah, I think the uniting factor is more in terms of Europe, whereas like we displaced Christianity, and then you have Islam, which is everyone believes in that really strongly, versus kind of an apathetic, well, we don't really believe in anything. And so it's almost like we don't really have anything to save because we have no future. It's all about the individual. Whereas in the olden days, we had that kind of culture, the Christian culture. Does that
Well,
make sense?
what you have in Europe that I wish you would advocate more for, that is better than Christianity, is humanism, right?
Yeah.
Even somebody like Majid, have you read his book, The Radical?
No,
It,
I've read the Hassan Harris one, but yeah, go on.
so the one that, when if you read it, he wasn't actually convinced by Islam himself to become a reformist. He was the thing that made an impact on him the most were the non-Muslims. When he was in jail, his mother's partner coming and caring for him, Amnesty International caring for him and supporting him. Those were the ideas that challenged his narrative, that made him think that
Well,
maybe
actually,
there's more.
I'm not too sure on that one because after he left the jail, he was still promoting his book Tahir very strongly
I
in the
understand, but
UK.
he was still thinking about these things. But the things that what I'm saying is that
It wasn't.
Majid himself, that advocates for having a theological Islamic argument to Muslims, he himself was influenced not by Islam but by humanism, right? And I think what Europe stands for, what I should stand for, and should stand for more, is not. I mean, you might think Christianity has. I saw based on your videos, you think that's the identity of Europe. That's an ancient ideology. Yes, it's not as bad as Islam, but it's gone. Okay, you're not gonna get that back. Christianity is an ancient ideology. The identity.
In Western Europe, though, not in Eastern
Yeah,
Europe. I wouldn't.
but it's not. Forget books from goat herders to figure out how to unite people. What Europe has, that is by its very nature anti-Islam, that people should unite, that use as an identity to unite with each other against Islam, is humanism. Okay, and that's the thing that you should hold as a uniting factor. That's what going and fighting against human rights violations, fighting against any ideology that advocates against human rights, right?
Yeah,
That's
but
something.
in the human rights, we have these bizarre situations where you can't deport known terrorists as they might be, tortured in their own country. So the human rights, it gets absurd in terms of the EU. It makes sense, though.
But human right. If you're advocating for human rights, by its very nature, you should be advocating against the Quran, right?
But I mean,
By its very nature, you should be saying that the Quran is bullshit. I think, Christianity, it's gone. Okay, forget it. I think there's something. This is something that no, it is.
and
I think there's something compared to Islam. Islam is the fastest growing. And actually, if you look at Pew Research, Christianity is going to become, it's going to be a fight between secularism and Islam. This is what the future is.
But China are adopting Christianity, so
China is so big that is anything that if a small percentage of it grows. No, I mean, if anything that goes from 1% to 1.5% in China is already going to be a major growth. So that's but I'm saying that worldwide Christianity is not going to be part of the future. It's going to be a battle between secularism and a battle between Islam, right? Secularism, humanism. And I think the identity that if you want something that you can unite everybody against these bullshit ideologies from Islam or any other ideology that advocates such horrible things, is humanism. And humanism, by its very nature, it's something positive, and it does have something that it is something that people could unite behind. But let me see some of these comments. I have a question for Majid. Does Majid believe? Well, actually, by the way, something I want to ask you and the audience. Majid is actually going to come on the Secular Jihadist show tomorrow. So I'm going to ask him. I have my questions for him. So if anybody wants to ask, suggest questions, please tweet them as me. So Lala is saying, does Majid believe in his own version of Reformed Islam, or does he just want others to believe in it? So tomorrow Majid is going to come on our show, and he's going to actually announce some of his beliefs that I think he hasn't announced yet. So we're going to know about that. But anybody else wants? What do you want Majid to answer? Like, if what suggestions do you have for a question for him?
I just say, do you have any numbers on how many people you've reformed, de-radicalized? What have you actually done? That's what I'd like to ask, because all I see him doing is making up these slogans and buzzwords. I don't see any hard data. I don't know what his purpose is, basically. That's I don't know, that sounds harsh, but I just
right. But
all I see basically is a lot of stupid white liberal atheists follow him and see him as a god, and if you criticize him, they think you're blaspheming against the messenger, because he's like, this person on Twitter calls it reformatology, like Scientology, and it's like a belief system, and if you oppose it, they're against. So but I don't know what he does. I'm not too sure. So he confuses people with semantic infiltration, but
right.
There's no facts there.
All right, but so I agree with you on the fact that I don't think that he has the numbers on his side, right? The comeback to us is usually, do you really expect 1.6 billion people to become atheists and give up Islam? And usually I say no.
No, not the atheism. I mean, how many Muslims has he reformed? That's
I know.
The point, isn't it?
No, but that's what they tell us. That's what the reformists tell us, right? And I tell them,
so what
that
they're doing then? If they're not reforming Islam, what's the purpose?
No, but I'm saying 1.6 billion Muslims are not going to reform either, right? So, but then they point to the Muslims that are not violent, and I say these people are not reformist Muslims. These people are just ignoring Islam, right? Mm-hmm. What I want, if you want to really count how many reformist Muslims we have, you have to show me Muslims that are taking Islam seriously and claim to be following it and reading the Quran, and then say that they have a reformist view of it. I think that's a very rare thing to have, right? Most people that take Islam seriously are either fundamentalists or ex-Muslims, right?
And also the fact that, like in the UK, we have 52% of Muslims who want homosexuals in prison. We have 2/3 who would not report on a known terrorist. So right. I think, that's the majority of Muslims in this country are not good. So and also 700,000 Muslims in the UK want full Sharia. 700,000. So I think this is,
right. So I just hope that most of them don't really know what Sharia means. But so Omar is asking, do you wants to ask Majid, do you seriously think anyone from the extreme Arab Sunni world right here where he's in Egypt, even know who he is? So basically Omar is saying that people in the Islamic world don't even know Majid. Most people that know Majid are in England or in US. So that's what Omar is saying. So Lala is saying, question to Majid, is Islamism or political Islam an intrinsic part of Islam, or is it a separate ideology? So I think what Majid would say to that is that the word dolat, which means the government, has never been, is in no hadith and in the Quran. But I think the word dolat, it's impossible for it to be there, because the word dolat was invented much later, so it was impossible for it to be there. And also Majid points out that if you look at the four caliphates, if you look at the Umayyads and the Abbasides, they were kind of secular. Like basically you had the Sharia courts and the Islamic mullahs. They were separate from the caliphates themselves, right? But I think he has that's true with the Umayyads and Abbasid, but it's not true with the Rashidun, with the four first caliphate, because Omar specifically, he enforced Islam, right? Well, so with the Rashidun, that's actually, there's less secularism. And again, pointing at the Umayyads and Abbasids, I don't think that's a valid point, because Muslims don't look at Umayyads and the Abbasids to see what true Islam is. Muslims look at Muhammad to see what true Islam is,
Yeah,
right?
but I think another issue is that the actual historical documents say that the Saracens, the Ishmaelites, the Hagarians, and the Muhajirun, they came out of Arabia, and then there was no mention of Islam, Muhammad, Quran until 691 under the Umayyad Caliphate, and basically Abd al-Malik and Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, they created Islam. So it began as a conquering, warlike
But
ideology,
but
and the
yeah,
religion
go
was
on.
put onto it. So it's fundamentally a political movement. That's the point. It has nothing to do with religion. It was justified afterwards. And then you had the people bringing the hadith out. But the crucial point is there is no history of, like I say, Quran, Muslims,
Well,
Muhammad.
didn't the Persians recorded some of the raids from them, and also the Byzantines recorded some of the raids that was reported by Muhammad independently?
No, I mean, I read a book from this Robert Spencer, Did Muhammad Exist? And there is no historical evidence. Even
But
Muhammad's word.
whether it's historic or not is besides the point, because that they see it as canon, right? So if people thought Voldemort was real and started following him, whether Voldemort is real or not, I'm still going to study Voldemort and see what he teaches. Whether it's a fiction, even if it's a fictional character, the fact is what's canon. I see what's canon in their ideology and go by that.
Oh, but
right?
even the actual, even the account says he only became successful after adopting politics. So either way, it's buggered.
Yeah,
You know.
but my point is that if I look at Islamic canon, right, and what Muslims see as the guide to life, I don't see Muslims say, "Oh, let me go and see what the Abbasid Caliphate did to see what true Islam is," right? They never said, "Let me see what the Umayyad Caliphates did to see what true Islam is." They say, "Let me see what Muhammad did to see what," and Muhammad brought up Islamic law and governed based on Islam in Medina, right?
Yeah.
So that's not very secular. Yeah. Even if he didn't use the word Dola, he still had an Islamic government, right? He wrote a constitution, right? So for the city. So not using the word Dola, I don't know how's that the point. Question from Ajid by Stephen. Is Quranic instruction if Quranic instructions are from a perfect book directly from Allah, how can he justify rejecting some aspect to those who are firm believers? Like, I still don't know. Do you know what his argument is? Because because if you're admitting that the Quran has problematic verses, you have to basically claiming one of these things. Either this is not the word of God, right? Yeah. Or God is making mistakes, right?
Well, I think what I've heard basically is he will say we have to acknowledge this exists, but I have never heard him say this is wrong. Because I actually spoke to him a little while ago, a few days ago, and he would not say Allah is wrong. That's the fundamental thing, because he knows once he says that, he's an ex-Muslim. That's it, job done. So he has to say it's there, but ignore it. But again, you can't do that.
So what would you say? Okay, so what would you say to the argument? Like, I'm trying to act like a reformist right now, right? And I'm gonna tell to you, like, but listen, Muslims are not gonna listen to you if you're not a Muslim. This has to come from inside, right? So yes, I see your point that these verses are problematic. But I have to be. I want to change this from the inside out. That's why there's some lines that I'm not gonna cross, like saying that Allah makes mistakes. I'm not gonna say Muhammad was a fucking pedophile, because those things will get me kicked out of the community. Yeah. But I want to stay within the community, and I basically target these bad ideas from the inside. What would you say?
The only issue there is, even with how far he goes, and he really just about skates over it, the Muslims still hate him. So him just mentioning these verses that showing they exist, because what he's doing, how the Muslims see it is, he is putting Islam in a bad light, and that's part of the blasphemy. You're in some way making Islam look bad, so you can't do that. And so Muslims don't trust him. I mean, there's no Muslims that I'm aware of that absolutely support him, and if they do, they're not good Muslims. So you might say no true Scotsman. I get that, but it's just I just.
Well, it's not a no true Scotsman, because
Yeah.
Because there needs to be a definition for a Muslim, right? Like, I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
if you say I'm an atheist, but I believe in a conscious creator of for if I say I'm an atheist, but I don't support gay rights, and somebody says, well, you're not a true atheist, that's a no true Scotsman fallacy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Yeah.
right, you could be a homophobe and an atheist at the same time. But if I
Yeah.
come and say I'm an atheist, but I do believe in a conscious creator of the universe, no, you're not an atheist, and that's not a
Yeah.
no true Scotsman's fallacy. That's part of the
Yeah.
definition of being a Muslim. So if you're a Muslim and you drink alcohol and have sex before marriage, yes, you're still a Muslim, right? Because
Mm.
you're just not a very good Muslim, right? But
Yeah.
if you say I'm a Muslim, but I don't think Muhammad was the prophet of God, and I think the Quran is not the direct word of God, and I'm not even sure if Allah is real or not, then that's not a no true Scotsman's fallacy, because at some point there's a definition for what the word Muslim is, right?
Because you're diluting it so much, where it's like you could just say anything. You could say I'm an elephant, or so you could do anything. Just change words, change meanings. You know, you gotta
Right. I mean, if the word Muslim can mean anything, then it means nothing.
exactly, yeah.
Right. So,
So yeah,
my question to Majid: do you have a the question to Majid? Do you have a concrete manifesto for reforming Islam that Muslims can read? How have Muslims responded to this reform? Some very good question. Armin is a bad Muslim. Okay, great. You're more right than you think, Armin. You just keep forgetting atheists in the closet Muslim. Oh, and also Omar is pointing that there's more atheists than we actually realize, because the atheists that we recognize in Islamic world are actually the atheists are atheists and are actually talking about it. So if we say there's 5% atheists in Saudi Arabia, imagine how many atheists are out there that are not even saying it, right? They're just
you
keeping it to themselves.
underestimate. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But here's my response to if somebody like Majid comes tells me that this has to be done by Muslims and people are not going to take non-Muslims seriously, I actually say no. I'm actually going to give Muslims more credit to that, because I've talked to Muslims and they do listen, even if you're not a Muslim, right? Especially if one strategy I have with Muslims that works, not just with Muslims but with anybody, is to give them wins. Tell them where they are right? So
yeah,
when you're talking to a Muslim and they are saying, look, I'm a Muslim and I don't believe in violence, I don't believe that gay people should be prosecuted against. Yes, go point to them that, well, that's not what Islam is based on your opinion, and they're just not following Muslims. But at the same time, tell them that they're good people. Tell them that they're, you and them are on the same side on some things, right?
yeah,
Give them some credit. Find people, both of you, that you disagree on, and tell them that you agree with them on those people being wrong, right? And
yeah,
when you give people these small little credits, you show them that you're not completely in opposite directions, and even though you're not a Muslim, they will listen to what you have to say, right?
yeah,
Because find those points of agreement and work on those, and then tell them. But another thing is that if you're talking to Muslims, try to have it recorded on your channel or on your podcast or on your blog post, so that more and more people see that these disagreements are no reason for hatred. Because even if you don't change Muslim opinions, the fact that more people get to disagree with Muslims openly without people from the left coming and to shut us up, then it will become easier for people to talk against Islam without going to jail for it, right? Because
yeah,
what I show to the people in the people on the left in the West, right, is like, look, the people that you're trying to defend, they themselves are okay with me criticizing Islam,
yeah,
right? So if I could get more and more Muslims that even if they don't change their opinions, if I could get more and more Muslims to say, yes, you're not the same as those bigots, it's okay for you to criticize Islam, even if I don't change their opinions, at least I'm fighting that leftist narrative that, oh, we're protecting these Muslims, because and you're not. You're actually, by shutting us down, you're making the bigots the only game in town. You're giving these people that are afraid of Islam, you're making the only manifestation of it in a bigoted way. You are the people people, the left are the people that gave birth to they gave birth to the new uprising of the alt-right. They are responsible for it. And I'm telling you, you pretend to be defending Muslims. You are the ones that are hurting them, because they themselves are. If you give me the chance, I can make the point to them for them to be okay for us to criticize Islam. You're not letting us have these discussions. You're not letting us have these civil discussions with Muslims, and you're making the bigots and the alt-right the only game in town.
I think that's why I was also kind of disappointed with Majid defending Muhammad, because that was almost like he was shutting down that conversation.
Yeah, that was cringy. Okay, that video that he's defending Muhammad marriage with Aisha, that was very cringy. Okay, like I would. Anybody like that was like I completely agree that was really bad.
He sounded like the Muslims defending wife beating or defending whatever. He was literally, he turned into one of these crazy apologists, and I was like, what? I thought you were like trying to, it made no sense.
Yeah, but my point is that I can look at that and be like, what the fuck, Majid? But at the same time, say thank you, Majid. You know what I mean? Like, we should be able to do those things at the same time, right?
I think it's like when you're seeing someone trying to basically defend child rape, it's like, oh, how do we, but I know.
Yeah, I could be like, what the fuck, Majid? Why are you defending Muhammad's sex with a 9-year-old? But at the same time be like, well, thank you, Majid, for bringing attention to the ex-Muslim suffering, right? But I just think like saying these two things are not a contradiction. We should be able to support people that we disagree with.
Yeah.
Right? But okay, Lala is pointing out that I don't need approval from Muslims to criticize Islam. I don't want it. But I'm saying, yes, you don't need it. Of course, you could do it and nobody's going to stop you from doing it. But the thing is that for that disapproval to have an effect, like the disapproval without an audience is just a disapproval, right?
Yeah.
For the disapproval to make any changes, we need an audience. And the audience that we need for us to have the most impact are the Muslims.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't need, yes, of course I don't need the approval from Muslims to criticize them. I could tell you Islamist shit without anybody approving me, right? But the approval part is not for me to be able to criticize it. The approval for me to go to Muslims to tell them why it's okay to criticize Islam is for them to start listening, because they do more often than not. When and I've seen its effect. Okay, there's so many people that came to fight us to defend Islam and ended up atheists. I can't even count the number of people that I know of. And imagine the people that never. I know people that say they come to Atheist Republic Facebook page without liking it, because they can't like it because they don't want their friends to see that they liked it, right? So they just bookmarked it. So because it won't show up in their feed, so they just want to go to the page to see it without actually. So given all the people that we don't see, I think the influence that we're making is huge.
Yeah, but again, that's what you see, because like with you, it's so simple what you're doing, trying to get them to leave Islam. But with Majid, again, it's just, I think the Muslims would actually respect you more for just stating the facts, and him trying to sort of dance around reality. They don't get that. But, with you, you're like, okay, I get it. It's all, so that's why.
Yeah, I acknowledge the same points that they're making. And like, how could you say that this verse means walk towards to this verse means beat the way? Like, I agree. So they see I'm not dancing around, but another thing is that it's not just them getting them to leave Islam. Even doubts is enough. So, right? Even them listening to us and be like, yeah, I still think Islam is true, but I'm just not 100% certain. That's a win. That's a huge win, right? And even because people say reform is the baby step, right? I'm saying no, doubt is the baby step, right? Reform is, selling a delusion in place of another delusion. That's not a baby step. And even a smaller baby step before doubt is acceptance of criticism, right? So I know Muslims now that still still Muslims, they believe in Islam, still have no doubt in Islam, right? They think 100% Islam is true, but they tell me, I see where you're coming from, right? I see why somebody would not like Islam. I see why somebody would be an atheist, right? And that's a smaller baby step than doubt, but even that is a win, because
Yeah.
nobody's going to be against me when they see my points, even if they disagree with my points, right? You know, they see, you know,
Yeah.
a lot of many. So that's another baby. These are the baby steps that I consider wins. I don't want to be in the business of selling a religion to people, right? That's what Muslims do, right?
Yeah.
So I don't
And
know.
I think with Majid is he doesn't seem like a religious person, which is like he seems more towards your end with the atheism, which like when I first started hearing him, I thought this guy's an atheist, but then he starts then defending Muhammad. I'm thinking, what? So you defend, you know, it confuses me how you can have like he seems so much like an atheist, you know, in a rational kind of way. I don't think,
Yeah, I kind of, I'm not sure if he's really,
yeah,
but I'm not gonna try to read people's mind. I'm just
yeah,
gonna take. But
but
Omar is saying Omar is an atheist. By the way, Omar Islam, he's a great atheist advocate in Egypt. He's
mm,
taking personal, like he's one of the heroes that we should all be admiring, because he's basically doing the same things we're doing, but with much more risk. He's saying
yeah,
that in Egypt, Muslims respect me more and say, at least you're not a lying fake Muslim. That's what Muslims say to atheists, right? But then also they also threaten him with hellfire and stuff.
that's nice.
Lala is saying baby step implies Muslims are babies.
Exactly.
They're grown up. Their beliefs are stronger than yours. Right. Yeah. We should. I mean, these are people that we shouldn't treat like children, right? We shouldn't be
Yeah,
like, you're too dumb to leave Islam, so let me just give you the different version of Islam, right? No, let's just tell them
exactly.
the
Yeah,
truth, right? Just tell them
exactly.
what the truth is.
We think they can't
Anyways,
handle the truth. Oh, yeah, go on. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So,
Anyways, I think this was good. Thank you so much for talking to me.
yeah,
I do have some disagreements with you with regards to immigration, but I
yeah,
think these disagreements are very minor. I think
mm,
at the end of the day, we have to recognize that the people, even whatever disagreements that we have, we are very different from people that want, gay people to die. We want to be different from
yeah,
people that think that leaving Islam deserves the death penalty. We are very different from people that think people shouldn't be able to give voice to their opinions. And these disagreements shouldn't stop us from recognizing the bigger difference that we have from people on that side, right? And I
yeah,
think, yeah. Anyways, great talking to you. And
oh
before you
yeah, yeah,
go, how can people find you?
yeah. So basically, Earthling Carl on YouTube, at Earthling Carl on Twitter, and Earthling Carl on VidMe and Minds.com.
Right. And you started your VidMe because YouTube is demonetizing and deplatforming people. So you started,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's basically just like a sort of like a last resort if they start trying to shut me down, you know.
Right.
You never know.
Right. So send me the links to everything. So
Yeah, yeah,
I will put it in the description of this video. So for people that want to go check out your work,
yeah.
and thank you for your activism. And I also I'll change the cover and the description. I'll send you the link once it's all
Okay,
ready.
okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, bye bye.
Bye.